Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Today's episode, we got a very, very, very special guest, somebody that I had the actual pleasure to meet at the Cosmic Summit. But before we introduce the guest, I'm going to introduce the other rejects that are joining us. And today we got my man, Tyrone. What is going on, sir? How are you? Please let everybody know where they can find all your amazing work.
What's up, everyone? What's going on, Ashton? How you doing, bro?
Good.
Hey, everything you can find on me is on my website, www.rebirthoftheWord.com. You can also buy my best-selling book that was on Amazon, Journey Through the Origins of History. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it, bro.
Oh, of course. Thank you for joining us. And we got my man, Headless Giant. What is going on, sir?
How you doing? You can find me on Twitter at the Headless Giant and on YouTube, Headless Giant as well. Check out my Instagram page. I'm going to be putting up a bunch of art there. And if you have any sort of paranormal / strange dream stories, you can email it to me at the headlessgiantpodcast@gmail.com, and we will read those on Thursdays. Tomorrow, I got my buddies Ricardo and Ethan Indigo coming on to do our trialogues on Sunday. So definitely check that out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. And we got Doc Brown, Prometheus Lens, joining us today. What is going on, sir? How are you? Thank you very much for making it.
Hey, no, I appreciate it, man. I'm honored to be a part of this panel, man. I was excited when you told me who we had coming on, and you invited me to come on. So I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to sit down and talk with this man. But yeah, Prometheus Lens Podcast is my show. Website's PrometheusLensPodcast.com. Anywhere you can consume content, you can find me there. And also, I had a book I just released this year. You can find it on Amazon. The Epic of Esau, Birthright and Seed War. Thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it.
Of course. No, thank you. And we got Sarah. What is going on, Sarah? Thank you very much for making it. Appreciate it.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm Sarah. I am public relations for the Institute for Natural Philosophy. So I will be filling in for Ricardo today. I'm also the co-host of the Universe Unveiled podcast. So be sure to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And definitely go check out that podcast. They've had some really good guests on so far. I was one of them. So. And then finally to the man of the episode. But before I introduce Ashton, I do want to say that when I was at the Cosmic Summit, there's a few things I had noticed. That there was a few speakers there that actually seemed to hang out with the crowd and the people more than others, instead of just hanging out with the other speakers. And besides Billy Carson, I will say that Ashton Forbes, in my opinion, was probably with the people the most. I saw him hanging out with them, talking to him. He's out there on his computer. He's trolling people on Twitter while he's hanging out with his friends at the Cosmic Summit. It was unreal. And I was like, this is a real motherfucker, and I'm going to beg him to come on the show, and he's going to do it eventually because he'll get tired of me asking. So here he is, Ashton. And before we get into the show, something I just want to mention for the people who are into the occult. I don't want to kind of screw up the flow of the show today because it's going to be a lot more science and technical. But something that we have talked about before, even when it comes to 9/11, every one of those planes was an Aleister Crowley book. It was a number that matched Aleister Crowley. The Boeing 777 matches Aleister Crowley 777, and he does even have a book that's Liber 370. So again, I just do find it interesting how what's going on with this plane, even the numbers match Crowley again. So think of it whatever you will with that. But now we're going to get into some smart stuff. I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions to explain things that I don't understand. So Ashton, please let everybody know what your deal is, what you're about, and where they can find all of your amazing work, sir. Please.
I'm the orb guy. No, I'm the MH370 guy. I don't know. I go by a lot of names. People call me. Some people call me the UFO guy, which is weird because I don't really talk about aliens or UFOs that much. But I guess it just comes with the territory. So I became like famous, I guess you could say, from researching the MH370 videos. Some very controversial videos that are out there that date back to 2014. After Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 disappeared on March 7th, 2014. These videos began to emerge for the first time around May 19th of 2014. But we just ignored them for like 9-10 years, basically. And then even when I started to promote them and investigate them, there was so much controversy over them. And people say, oh, these people are, disinfo or feds attacking you or what have you. But I think a lot of it's really just like, we're just now as a species starting to wake up to that type of technology, that type of physics, that type of science being able to be real. The same way we're like cavemen would have struggled with like understanding why we have like an iPhone. Like, how can this be a thing that's real? You know, that wouldn't be something they could understand either. So I've been investigating. I started by investigating the plane and realizing that like those videos are real and there is a conspiracy around the missing plane, and then took it in another direction where I said, okay, well, I mean, something this incredible, like, how is this scientifically possible? How is this physically possible? And to me, that was the biggest revelation, which was finding out that the science to support it, like this idea of 0 point energy, basically is out there. The papers have been written. It goes back, you know, maybe 70, 80, 100 years, maybe all the way back to Tesla, essentially. And that's where this journey has taken me today, is trying to understand that physics, 0 point energy, and realizing that it all leads back to plasma and nukes, actually, which means it leads back to fusion as well. So the craziest part is it all kind of comes full circle, where I went from an area of like, okay, this is impossible, like this would require magical new physics, to, oh no, the physics is actually all out there, but you know, it's been suppressed, to then realizing like, no, the physics isn't just out there, but like literally all the Department of Energy labs are like literally researching this. And I'm going like, how, we don't pay attention to what they're doing. Like that seems to be the answer. So that's the long-winded answer to who I am.
Nice.
Well, that's a good explanation. I think if people knew more about the Department of Energy, we wouldn't be in this situation. Is there a quick way that you can describe to people all the roles that Department of Energy has in this sort of development?
Well, I think the most educational thing people should learn is how the research functions. So you have Aerospace Corporation and you have Battelle Institute. And Battelle Institute is the ones that's like the contractor for all the labs. So they actually manage all the labs. It's like $11 billion per year, but that's all just federal money. They don't have any commercial clients. So it's basically our tax dollars, right? But because it's being filtered through this third-party management company where all the labs are being managed, my guess is they use that to shield things from FOIA requests, because now it's not government anymore. So that's the first thing people need to know. Then Aerospace Corporation, they also get like $1 billion every year from the government. They're like federal non-for-profits is what they call them. And these are the people that actually outsource the scientists. So if you're an engineer or what have you, like, okay, you get a contract, it goes through Aerospace Corporation, but it might be for like a DOE lab to work on this plasma, blah, blah, blah. So that's the important thing to understand, is how's the funding work for the DOE? I think the other thing that people understand that's important in this context is more, I would say, speculative, which is, why is the DOE connected to the UFO topic? Like, everybody says, oh, the DOE's the top dog and the Q clearance or what have you. Well, it's because of the energy sources. Like whatever the UFOs flying around with, it's got to be the energy source. So when we are looking for the answers to what are these UFOs? How are they flying around? How are they floating freely? How are they teleporting? We should probably be looking at what the DOE is doing, because they're apparently the ones who are gatekeeping it. So that's where I think it leads back to, oh, what are they studying in all those labs? Fusion, plasma stabilization, like all these concepts that, if you take them to their extreme and what you could do, you come up with a plasma orb that can like fly around.
Nice. That was actually something I did want to get into. Honestly, I just didn't even know where to start. I mean, I know you had gone over one thing I thought was awesome at the Cosmic Summit. You went over patents. Now, I don't know if that's something that you want to like really get into, or if that's something you have to cover to get into orbs. But I do know that's something you've even been going into recently too, is the whole orb thing, and what what is your idea of those orbs? Like, what are they doing, and how are they even there with this?
Yeah. Do you want me to share a video real quick?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, share what it, pull up whatever you want.
Let me pull up this one. Because this is here's Gorgon Stare Wide Area Motion Imagery video, which is from a drone from above. And these orbs, this isn't a situation where like I came up with an idea of what the orbs were. It was like, just follow the science and figure out where the science leads. And where the science led was a compact fusion reactor. It's like, when you look up fusion reactors, you find out it's just all about manipulating plasma. And these orbs are a plasma ball that's being contained by a magnetic field. It's not a solid thing around it. You can't really tell from this particular video. Thankfully, we have a second video that tells us more detail about the orbs. But this tells us that we got, 3 things perfectly aligned in a triangle formation. And plasma can explain that too, because it's the magnetic fields that are causing it to link up in that perfect triangle. Which that was one of the things that I thought was just totally wild, is that we have seen orbs and triangle formations get talked about in the UFO community over like the last 10 years or so. It's gotten kind of popular. Let me switch and show the other video real quick.
Do those orbs switch the way the directions at some point too? It looks like they spin.
Kind of seems like it's really hard to tell because they're spinning 360 degrees around the plane.
Yeah.
And once they lock in, because you can use something called magnetic inversion. Magnetic inversion means that like you have a positive and minus charge that are somewhat separated. And if you take two positive and minus charges that are separated like that and bring them close, they kind of get to an equilibrium point where they don't come together anymore, but they don't pull apart anymore. So check out magnet inversion if that's intrigues you. The real giveaway here, like, first of all, when you're looking at this, you look at these orbs here, that's not a solid structure around the orb. How do we know? Because in a second, you're going to be able to basically see through them. Like they become partially transparent. You can see that. So it's like, wait, that means it's not a solid thing. And this is how early on I was able to deduce that must be a plasma field, like a plasma structure around something inside that we can't see. But the other giveaways, well, look at those dark lines. Can you guys see those dark lines like behind the orbs? It actually turns out, if you look at a different color version of this, which I'll show here in just a second, those dark lines are clearly in front of the orbs. Like even right here, you can pretty much tell these dark lines are not even behind the orbs anymore. I'm just kind of pausing it and going slow. The dark lines are actually in front of the orbs. And look at the heat signature spin around like that. And just, I mean, look at that heat signature. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. I couldn't even imagine someone inventing that, let alone like making all these frames. Where you can see it distort a little bit there too. So it's not something that's like a solid structure like the airplane. It's something that's a little bit more amorphous.
Yeah.
But the reason why that you see the dark lines in front of it, let me show you one last version, which will make that part clear, is because when you look into fusion, there's all these instabilities. And all these different instabilities. Wait, did I cancel that? Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. If you can pull that up. All these different instabilities basically boil down to when we try to do fusion, it always tries to escape. And when it's escaping confinement, it's damaging the thing that's confining it. Usually, like these reactors have superconducting magnets and they have all this stuff to protect it from radiation and damage. But ultimately, that's the reason why we can't keep these fusion reactors running for a long time. So they figured out something really smart, which was don't try to force it to be confined into a sphere. Let it leak out. Let it leak out in a controlled way. And when you do that, then you can use it as propulsion. So in this, you can clearly see those dark lines are in front of the orbs, like leading them pretty much. So what this means is there's actually not that many possible fusion configurations for this. These have to be spheramax. I mean, we're looking at a sphere. So that must be a plasma that's being confined in by a spherical magnetic fields. And one of the only ways that only configurations for this is something called field reverse configuration. A field reverse configuration creates an axial poloidal magnetic field, just like the Earth. And with the Earth, how does the Earth work? Yeah, we have a north and a south pole. If you imagine like a neutron star, these neutron stars have jets shooting out of either end of them. Like what do they call it? I don't know what the name of it is. Some, death beam, or they say they're like, oh, if that beam is facing us, it'll like instantly wipe us out. This is what they're talking about, because these plasma balls are spitting out material or X-rays, out of either end of it. And they just realized like, oh, we can use that as propulsion. So that's what's going on with the orbs at a high level.
Well, that brings up something interesting. So these precursor sort of shadows, right? Would that be an indication of some sort of cavitation containment? Because I think a lot of this comes down to this cavitation idea that we see that alternative energy researchers have been working on for years, and it keeps coming up over and over again as this cavitation force field or cavitation force.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about like an implosive force, basically. I think that theme comes up a lot in these videos. First of all, with this zap with the plane disappearing, which I've come to conclude must be some form of wormhole. Wormhole is like a conceptual view of how we would connect 2 points in space and time. It's not really a technical, how do you do this kind of thing. It's more of a, how would you think about the universe and doing something like that? and cavitation. So we also, when that plane disappears, if that was an explosion, I would expect this white hot explosion on the thermal camera. And in the Gorgon stare whammy, it's like this flash for just one like second. So photons are being released, but they're not hot photons because they're not hot in the other video. This is like another one of the biggest giveaways. That means that's some kind of endothermic reaction. It's like a monopole, one half of a magnet. It's like one end of a magnet. It's blipping out, and that must be blipping back in somewhere else. That's what it seems to represent from the color and the heat signatures that we're seeing on the videos. And cavitation, this idea of implosive effect, it's almost like the difference between fission and fusion. So we have like an A bomb, which is like a release of energy. But from a fusion perspective, is that the opposite? Like, what would a pure fusion bomb actually look like? This is what I would challenge people, because when I first had this idea of like, are we looking at like a pure fusion bomb with no fission, no neutrons being released as heat? Is that why it's like purely dark in that thermal? One of the things I started researching was the history of it. Like, okay, well, what's the history of the H-bomb? Well, the H-bomb was figured out in the 60s, but it was never dropped, at least not publicly. Publicly, there was never an H-bomb that was set off. And nuclear, whatever it is, prohibition or whatever it was, like we basically stopped making nukes and what have you. So I wonder if there is this connection to cavitation and implosive effect that we figured out from fusion bombs, and we never showed what they do. And everybody in their mind has just thought, oh yeah, a thermonuclear bomb, just like a bigger nuke. That must be what it is. But what if it's not that? What if it's actually just like straight up so much electromagnetic energy in a region of space-time, in a condensed region of space-time, that it actually just detaches that region from space-time, like just detaches it? That would actually make kind of a lot of sense in terms of like when and how they would have branched this technology. It would have been in the 60s when they figured out fusion, and they figured out this whole other aspect of manipulating space-time from fusion bombs. And then they would have had to classify inertial confinement fusion research, which is also potentially linked to cavitation, because this idea of like this super powerful compressive pressure force, going inward on your object. And so basically maybe that, cavitation, compression, fusion, all of this was suppressed while they were trying to figure out H-bombs and how to make the waves like hit these H-bombs and to make, these massive effects. They figured out something completely different, potentially.
It would be like a different form of mathematics, right? We're operating on one form of mathematics. They're operating on a completely different form. And so this is where that disconnect really starts to line up.
I wouldn't take it that far personally. I think that what I've found is that you don't need new math or physics to actually figure this out. That's part of the rub too. So we don't have to have some, here's the hidden physics, here's the hidden math. It's actually just a conceptual perspective change, in my opinion. And it's a simple one too. We go from thinking that we're in an empty vacuum to realizing we're in a medium, we're in a fish tank. And we do kind of think that, but we think of it as like the air around us, but we don't really think about the air around us. We don't really, we just assume, we're chilling in this bubble here. It seems like nothing, but that's also true of empty space. Empty space also isn't nothing. It's also not nothing. And this conceptual viewpoint change changes everything, because what it means then is the space, the distance between here and the moon or here and anywhere is the 0 point energy. That is a substance. So if you remove that substance, what happens? You shrink the distance between here and there, potentially. Now, this conceptual viewpoint helps understand how Einstein was right about general relativity. Einstein was right. Actually, all the equations about like warp drives and wormholes, they come from Einstein's general relativity. It's a big misconception that people think that like Einstein thought space was empty. No, for Einstein was the one that said there would be gravitational waves, and we found them. And that shows that space-time is some kind of medium. It's not just some fixed thing that, is empty.
Yeah. And Ashton, I had a question, man. When I first seen that video, I thought that was pretty fascinating, but the past few years, I've seen some people that posting on Reddit, and they were going through and they were editors and looking at this stuff. I didn't know. I wanted to get your comments on the people that claim that this is, edited. And one of the things that one of the videos I seen, they put side by side a video from this 1990s video game, Killing Time, when this portal opens up, and the guy that, stealed the frame and put them side by side. I mean, they look almost identical, if I'm just being honest. But I've not heard anybody rebuttal it or anything like that. I just want to know what your thoughts were on it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've refuted it a lot of times. I mean, I don't know. I was surprised that actually caught on as well as it did. When you see the debunks, usually this is like a magician's trick. What they do is they edit it and then they hide the parts that don't match, and they show you like one edge and they go, oh, look, it's a perfect match. Like after I've changed it, after I've recolored it, after I've shown you the part I don't show you, but they don't say that part. They just say it's a perfect match. Oh, you forgot the 5 steps before that. And so usually what I do, it's like the easiest way to break down and just prove that those people are lying to you is I just literally will show you like an exact overlay. Like that's like, and they'll never show you that. Those debunkers never will. So like pull this up if you don't mind real quick.
Okay.
So I can just show this. So, I mean, this is an exact overlay of the 2 frames. And I want to point out the people that say it's an exact match, they're saying that someone took a stock effect, which is multiple frames, and put it into the video. But this is the only frame that's even close. And as you can see here, I can see what they did. They found something where the edges on the right are similar, but in the middle, it's not even close to the same. Now, I'll be honest, it is pretty amazing they found something that has a dot that's almost kind of in the similar spot here. But again,
That's what got me. Yeah.
This needs to be a perfect match. This can't be a partial match. Partial match means it's not a match. You're telling me that someone edited this into the video. It needs to be a perfect match, like literally pixel for pixel perfect match. Not, oh, it's pretty close. And again, I'm going to point out, I know these videos are real. So what do you really want from me? If you're going to make up stuff like that, like, oh, it's close enough. No, it's not good enough. You can't just say it's close enough. In fact, here, if you pull this up, this is the actual full stock effect, not just the 1 frame, the whole stock effect put into the video. That's it. 1 frame, you can see, yeah, it looks kind of similar if you resize it, right? But you can see the edges don't actually really match. It's close. And then after that, nothing's even remote. How would you even edit this frame to get this to match? I don't know how. You can see there's like a blast effect. And that's because this is actually not what this stock effect here, this isn't even CGI. This is photos. We found the guy that made this. Those are pictures of fire. So wait, you're telling me someone modified pictures of fire? Photos of fire. That's a photo, not a CGI. So like that's how easy it is to just debunk. That's the #1 debunk, by the way. Most people think that stock effect is a perfect match because people on YouTube keep repeating the lie that it is when I can just show you in 5 seconds that it's not. And so my question would be, if they're willing to like lie that boldly, never show you what I just showed you, never explain in simple terms like I just did, why is anyone listening to those people at all? What else are they lying about? In fact, too, because the people that are making those claims are not just like one-time debunker people. They're people that like Mick West, who's debunking literally everything out there. And if he's willing to lie so boldly about something like that, or the Corridor crew who make multiple debunk like reaction videos, you know, what else are they willing to lie about? I think it's crazy that people think that I don't like have credibility when, you know, I'm happy to discuss these. And do you see those people on podcasts answering questions? Never, ever. Mick West will never go on a podcast where anyone's going to be adversarial towards him ever because he's afraid.
Well, I'm glad I asked, man, because that's obviously something you've been asked a lot, and I wasn't aware, but you had the film at the ready, man. I appreciate that.
I've got all the debunk stuff ready. I mean, the only other thing too I'll say is that the way that I saw it kind of play out is like people online just kind of make stuff up, like, oh, this shouldn't look this way or this shouldn't look that way. And then they'll like try to Google something that they'll think that like supports their view, but it's kind of out of context because they don't. Really
they don't Google it no more, man. They chat GPT or Grok it.
Hey, Grok, what's the answer to this? Right? Like, oh my God. And then, you know, and Grok is just lying too now at this point because Grok's just reading whatever people saw on the internet, which that scares me more than anything. So really what I want, and this is, if you go back to my early live streams, I told people like people need to learn to think critically. Like we have to think critically about everything. And this is where the debunkers are the ones trying to tell you think critically, but they're not the ones thinking critically. They're the ones going, oh, that's close enough match. We don't have to think about where this plane disappeared into and how that could have been possible and why we never really found anything where we were searching, you know? So what I tell people to try to like really rationalize how this is real to people is say like, what do you think the whole story is? If you believe the videos are fake, what do you think the story is about who made those videos? Because there's nobody that's claiming to be the person that made those videos. In fact, one person was claiming for like a year and a half, and it turned out they were a huge scammer. And it turned out they were like texting with this website owner place and like asking them to fake receipts to pretend like they made the videos. So, I mean, like, who made the videos if you think they did? And what we're even not even if you don't know the exact person, but what's the mental profile of the person who faked videos of a missing plane within a few days with this looks like military footage? And how did they know all of that? And why did they waste all this time to do this? And how did they know what coordinates to put in the plane? And why did they put a satellite designation in the bottom left that says NROL 22, which is a real satellite? And why did they know to call it NROL 22, which nobody, I don't think, would have ever thought to do that? Like, these are all just a few of the completely inexplicable questions. But the big killer, the real nail in the coffin is Gorgon Stare. I mean, once I found out that that was Gorgon Stare wide area motion imagery, everyone's wondering, that first video I showed, it's actually not video at all. The frame rate's too low. It's only 6 frames per second. Why is the screen moving around like this? Why is there a mouse cursor that like comes off the screen and is moving around on the screen? Because you're looking at someone who's on software recording with their mouse, and they're recording a window. Like right now I have a bunch of windows up on my screen. They're recording one of those windows, and that's why you see the mouse come onto the window. And then why does it go black at the end? It goes black at the end because they close the window, and now the screen goes black. And that surveillance capability, that whammy, was basically brand new. That capability we're looking at was almost brand new in 2014 when that would have leaked. So those leaks wouldn't have just been crazy plasma orbs, teleportation, black operation, but also revealing our secret drone surveillance capability, which apparently is like Google Earth. Wherever you have a drone flying over, you can just, I want to do some DVR playback. Oh, I missed that episode of Teleport the Plane. Let's go ahead and pull that back up.
Well, and the most important part about this debunking is that they're focusing on the messenger. You found these videos. It's not like you created them, and we can't find the guys who created them. So if they were really trying to debunk it, they'd be going after finding who posted these videos, and they're not interested.
So this is the giveaway. There's so many ways to show that the people trying to debunk these videos aren't doing it in good faith. But the best one is, early on, too, they have a whole debunker subreddit that they banned me from right away because they can't have people like actually solving the mystery. They would say that, oh, I'm the one hurting the case. I'm the one making it so that we're never going to get the truth because I'm spreading so much disinformation about it. And I'd laugh in those people's faces because none of them have been trying to solve MH370. None of them have been trying to solve the videos. They've all been trying to make it go away. That's all they've been trying to do from the beginning. They're trying to make people not listen to me. They've been trying to make nobody look at those videos, trying to make content related to MH370 in those videos not be seen, deboosted, whatever they can do. They want as many people as possible to think those videos are fake because they need that to happen because that's the only way those videos stay hidden. Is that the moment people start to wake up, those videos, that's the biggest nightmare the U.S. government could have ever imagined. So once again, why are these people not trying to solve the case? Why are they attacking me? Why are they trying to debunk the videos at all? Like, anybody that's a good faith researcher, they should just be trying to figure out like who made the videos. If I didn't think the videos were real, I'd be trying to figure out who made them. I'd be like, that's crazy. How could somebody have made this? We need to find that person. They're not interested in that though, because they know there's nobody that made them.
They don't want the basics, man. I always say you got to know the basics before you even attack anything else. And that's the basics right there. Who the hell made the video in the first place? And then let's go from there. You know what I mean?
Right? Like, even as me, as like a video person podcasting, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to pull apart that video because that's where I'm going to find out if it's real or not. Like, I understand what you're getting at. You go to the source.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Even if they come back and say like, oh, well, what can you find the person that leaked them? Yes, I did. I literally found the person that leaked the videos. And that's the whole point, is like, if those videos were fake, you should be able to find the person that made them. No excuses whatsoever. They're not dead or whatever other BS people try to come up with. It wasn't some 80-year-old man making those videos in 2014 or something like that. I literally found the guy that leaked them because just from looking at the videos, that's how you can only do this from real videos. You can tell the intent of the person leaking them. You can tell what's going on. You can tell that that's a leaked military footage from the United States government just from the videos, because we can see a General Atomics MQ-9 drone with like a Northrop Grumman camera on hardpoint number 5 underneath the drone. Like, that information alone proves that's the United States government at play. So then it was just a matter of like, okay, They must have charged somebody with this. Like the first thing I learned was you can't actually hide these charges. Unless we're in martial law, if somebody does something like this, you got to charge them publicly. Okay, so was anybody charged with like major crimes, like, you know, espionage that maybe it got brushed under the rug or something like that where we never really heard about it? Oh, yeah. I found the guy. It took like 2 weeks, but there's not that many people. And I just went systematically down the list. Once I hit Edward Lynn, I was like, oh, there he is. Found him. Like, he's in this super secret Navy program. He's got the exact right access he would need. He gets charged with espionage, but his case is shrouded in mystery. They won't say what it is that he leaked, but his lawyer is going around saying that, oh, it's on the internet. The evidence is on the internet. What? And then they make him take a plea deal. They make him take a plea deal. They convince him that what he did was wrong, which is probably like, that wasn't aliens, bro. You weren't leaking aliens to the world. You were leaking our nuclear secrets to the world. Just imagine how the conversation went. And then he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I'm hurt. My spirit is broken. That's almost a direct quote, by the way. And takes the plea deal. So they get rid of all the espionage charges. They're like, okay, you took a plea deal. We're just going to get you with classified, you know, information or whatever. He's like, great. I'm going to get a slap on the wrist, right? 9 years.
Ooh,
9 years.
that'd be in federal prison too, right?
For dissemination of classified information? That's crazy. That's a super long time. So you'd think, okay, he appeals. We look at his appeal. His appeal, actually, the penal codes are consistent with video evidence being what he leaked. I mean, it could be other stuff because the penal codes are multiple things, but, you know, still in the realm. He argued that he got like way too much time. And so in response, the military said, nope, what he leaked was super serious. And they had people testify to the judge why it was so serious. They actually needed someone to, why would you need someone to testify to the judge about why what he was leaked was so serious? Shouldn't it just be obvious, right? Was it nuclear codes? Like, what was it? Oh, because it's some crazy videos of orbs spinning around a plane. And then someone's got to explain that to the judge because it can't be explained otherwise, right? Like, why is this guy not a hero, for example? You know, he's leaking like an illegal operation to the world. Oh, because it's a classified official operation, you know? So, what was the last thing I was going to say? But yeah, so he's the guy that had to have leaked the videos, and he changed his name after I figured this out. We didn't find this out until like 6 months ago. But after I figured this out, 3 months later, I'm saying his name on podcast. He legally changes his name. I'm trying to find the guy. Like, I was looking around trying to find him, trying to get in touch with him. Because, like, maybe he'll talk to me. I don't know what the circumstances were. But now I know the circumstances. Like, his sister's a lawyer in Homeland Security. His brother-in-law is Sean Naylor, who's a, like, national security MSM, mainstream media, like, spook guy. And I'm going, holy shit, now I see what's going on. Like, nobody knows what Edward Lynn leaked. His family might not know. His friends probably don't know. I talked to somebody that was in his unit. They didn't know. They thought it was like prostitutes. I'm like, dude, does that make sense? He was telling prostitutes something. They put him in prison for 9 years. He literally triggered a security alert to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. What he leaked did. That wasn't prostitutes, bro. That is actual video of something, right? And the VPU2 person told me this isn't even, I think, in any of the media releases, that when Edward Lynn got arrested, they rolled him up with flash drives as well. Now, that's hugely important because it implies that he was pulling data and running away with it. And that would explain how those videos got on the internet, too, is he pulled them from a skiff. So, and last thing I'll say is that his sister won't talk. The brother-in-law won't talk. I can't get him to talk. I've called his business multiple times. Can't get him on the phone. His lawyer, tried to get his lawyer. I have his lawyer's phone number. He disconnected his phone number, turned his phone off. Would never return any phone calls. And not like I'm being psycho. I'm just asking him, like, hey, bro, I'm going to talk to you about your guy, your client and his case, especially because, like, I have some pretty compelling, like, I'm basically saying he's a hero, in my opinion. He's leaking, like, free energy, plasma orb technology, black operation. From a public perspective, he seems like he should be a hero. But I think that all the baggage that comes along with it, and he knows that, like, this isn't the kind of thing that you come out and you become a hero. Like, they try to bury you if you come out probably with something like this, right? So that's the Edward Lynn story.
That's incredible. So let's get into some of the patents. This is some of the new stuff that you've been talking about. What kind of patents have you found tangential to this technology?
So patent wise, I mean, I think that the scientific papers are better, but the patents, thing about the patents is a lot of them are just like hard to read, hard to understand. They make them that way intentionally. And from watching the engineers too, even the engineers know that like the patent office won't approve anything that's touches on like violating the first or second law of thermodynamics. So they word everything in like overly complex ways, intentionally actually, which goes to show how messed up the system is. But the patent that first caught my eye was the coherent matter wave beam patent by Charles Chase of Lockheed Martin. And I never even really understood it that well. But from reading it, it seemed like the kind of thing where like you're making matter like phase through solid objects. And you're like, wait, okay, well, that seems relevant if somehow we figured out teleportation, you know? So, and Bob Greenyer had been talking about that patent for a while too. So I had always had my eye on that patent. And then it wasn't until a few weeks ago when I found, I saw another video by Charles Chase, the guy that was the patent holder, and he was talking about the coherent matter wave beam, and he finally explains what it can do. And he says, oh, it's a million times more powerful than a laser. And my eyes opened up because lasers have gotten extremely powerful. Attosecond lasers, I think it's like 10 to the minus 18. Basically, the faster you can pulse something, the more energy density you can fit into a little region. And that's exactly what we need for like space-time manipulation, according to the math and to the physics. So if you can make something that's a million times more powerful than that, that's another 6 zeros. I'm going, this has got to be able to manipulate space-time. Like, and then the other thing is, what else can it do? It can also do atomic scale manufacturing. And now I'm going, wait, are you talking about Star Trek replicators? Well, yeah, it turns out this Charles Chase guy just did an interview 2 days ago. And he literally says the word replicator, says that's what he was doing with the coherent matter wave. That's what he's working on right now. And then the last thing he says is transporting matter at a distance, which I think is a head nod to teleportation. So that's my favorite patent. And that's my favorite guy, which, by the way, looked into Charles Chase, top 0.1% of Lockheed Martin engineers. He got fellow designation. And he's the guy that convinced the CXOs of Lockheed Martin, the top people of Lockheed Martin, to go all in on this compact fusion reactor idea like a decade ago. And on his resume, it says it was successful and it's breathing on its own. Direct quote on his resume from the guy who invented it, was the guy who convinced the CXOs to do it. And that project went dark in 2018 and no one knows what happened to it since. So I'm going, guys, like literally Congress should be like compelling Charles Chase to testify, because if anyone wants to know where the super magic technology is, like there's your smoking gun.
Right, but
Ashton,
that's kind of the purpose. Oh, go ahead.
No, just real quickly, Ashton, my apologies. The actual coherent matter wave, does that touch upon the Hutchinson effect by any chance?
It could. I think he was asked, I think, about Hutchinson. But the coherent matter wave beam is essentially taking, so with a laser, you make sure all the wavelengths of light are in the same phase. So think of it as like the same color, right? All the same exact color. That's why a laser is one single color. And then you just overlap them on top of each other. And when you overlap those waves, they amplify. That's why a laser is like stimulated amplification, light amplifications, stimulated. I always forget the exact acronym. But with a matter wave, you're essentially doing the same thing. You're saying, okay, now matter itself is a wave. So you think of an atom or a cup, and we look at it and we think of it as a solid object. But if you really boil it down, this is a complex series of waves. That's what this is. So if we can actually isolate our matter waves, and the way they do this is a Bose-Einstein condensate, then we can eject the matter all out at the same wavelength, the same way we do with the light, with the laser. We can eject the light out, the photons at the same wavelength. If we can do the same thing with matter, then you can create a matter wave beam. But to answer your question, is it connected to the Hutchinson stuff? Yeah, absolutely. And Thomas Townsend Brown and really a lot of the engineers and scientists that you've heard in the lore around free energy and gravity manipulation, it's all connected by a common thread of science for sure.
Yeah, because it would play upon the whole fusion thing that you were speaking about earlier. And then I guess in essence, it would be analogous to switching out photons for matter. Like they're both packets of energy. It's just the density, right? Would that be correct to say?
Mass is energy, matter is energy. So that's one of the really important things. I think it was a Ning Li presentation. She's one of these anti-gravity researchers from the 90s that saw YBCO or YCBO. I always get the acronym mixed up, but these superconductors, it was her and her presentation where she points out E equals MC squared means that matter is equal to energy. Now that seems like a very basic thing, but it's so fundamental and so important. Because if we are now saying that we can manipulate gravity through mass, like a planet, well, now if I convert that mass into energy, I should be able to calculate how much energy I need to manipulate space-time as well. And so that's super important, because now we're saying, okay, if I'm going to manipulate the space-time with energy, now I can actually do the calculations. Now I can figure out theoretically what I would need. And this is what scientists did. They did that. And they found, oh, well, to manipulate space-time significantly, we need like this Jupiter size amount of mass energy. And so they will call it mass energy. But then they also figured out, okay, we start doing the math. We start finding little tricks that we can do. Like, spin is one of the things they can do. They call it a rotating wormhole. One of the other things they can do is they can make flat-faced wormholes. And then these things now reduce the energy requirements significantly. So there are ways they found then even around the challenges that they had.
And I guess and just to go ahead, sorry.
One other thing that I just wanted to this is kind of tangential or related to that, was that when it comes to waves as well, this idea of fusion. So we think of fusion as like particles, forcing the particles to come together, and they want to repel each other. So they get to this point and we can't get them to come any closer. The Coulomb barrier, we call it. But if particles are just waves, they're not actually particles anymore, then really we're combining waves when we're doing fusion. Combining the waves together and we make a new wave from it. That would be, in my opinion, a more intuitive way of thinking about fusion. We just don't think about it that way because we think of everything as particles. Charles Chase actually touches on this subject, and he says, the matter wave beam can create new elements, like literally even super heavy elements that we wouldn't think we could create naturally, but we can artificially create them and they become stable as well. So there may be this connection between the coherent matter wave beam and fusion. And when I see stuff like coherent matter wave beam and hear that explanation myself, I go, obviously they must have figured out fusion. You can't figure out a coherent matter wave beam without have already first figured out fusion, right? So.
Yeah, and so kind of just going based on building on what you said, in my mind, I'm relating it to biological systems. And there are points when you have a wave that's coming from both ends and they meet in the center and then they kind of go back out. But that center point is that 0 point node. And I almost wonder if some of these orbs, wormholes, is that center point node. And the reason I say that is because you see it kind of stand still, and it is the actual point of manipulation. And when you think about DNA, you see this entire coding region, but it's in specific areas where you have a palindrome and a repeating area, and it is the point where you can manipulate the entire genome. It is the site where viruses inject themselves, to where you can manipulate the coding region going in and out. And so when you bring in the wormhole thing, and then you think about gravitational as waves, to me, and it probably is completely incorrect, that I think of it in terms of 0 point nodes, that they are points of manipulation for time, space, or electromagnetic fields, or anything like that. So,
yeah, I think the big thing to bring up is scale invariance. Scale invariance. Things that are very small can be very large as well. So then I guess the question is, at the smallest possible scales, what does the universe look like? If I had to guess, I'd guess it probably looks like what it looks like at the very large scales as well. And so that also applies to biology, probably. I think all this physics absolutely applies to biology. It must. And what you'll find when you start to dig into these engineers and scientists and physicists, a lot of them make that connection. Some of them are leap into it more than others do, but they all realize that, where's the energy coming from? Where's consciousness coming from? Is there a connection between quantum entanglement and how our minds work? And I agree on that as well. When it comes to 0-point nodes and the planes and the orbs, absolutely, that's definitely in play in these videos. Like the way those orbs are stabilized, where they don't seem to they don't dissipate. Like if a lightning were to strike, it's going to dissipate, right? But these are like lightning balls that are just floating around, almost like I made a vortex in my pool, and the vortex is just going on forever. And that configuration implies you've created this 0 point in space-time potentially. Then that's how they're able to create fusion and cause this propulsion and be stable. That you've created this 0 point like longitudinal wave through the ether that's like invisible to us, is how I would think of it. With respect to the plane itself, the 0 point is around the plane. Those orbs in a perfect triangle formation, when they're using magnetic inversion to get locked into place like that, where they don't come in or out any further, there's a 0 point right in the middle where all the magnetic fields cancel each other out. It means there's no magnetic field there. So how do I know this is teleportation? You wouldn't go through all that effort if you were just annihilating the plane. You would just be like, shoot it with a missile. Like the reason why you're doing this complex dance with the 0 point right in the middle of the plane is because that's a wormhole. You're like detaching everything else around it. And when the orbs come together, they're coming together right before the plane disappears, also in a perfect geometric sequence as well, to your point, because they're maintaining that 0 point. They're like pinching and squeezing the plane, but not squeezing it through our three-dimensional space, squeezing it through the fourth dimension, right? Like down, if you would want to think of it like that. And they're saying, okay, you're getting squeezed, poop, and then it's going to pop out back over here somewhere else.
And
So
the
yeah,
reason
I-
this all kind of spurred was because when you showed the images, if you and maybe you have, when you look at conception, when the sperm has penetrated into the zona pellucida of the egg, and you see that explosion of 600,000 ions, it looks almost identical. And you do have a wormhole being created when you trap matter, when you trap matter and energy into matter during conception. And this is not a debate or anything like that. It's proven IVF. This is the flash that they look for before implantation, and you're charged $50,000 for it. So it just looks similar to the images you showed of right before the plane when the plane disappears, and then when you look at conception and that explosion of the zona pellucida. So yeah,
another fun thing too is
calcium
that,
reaction.
space can turn into photons as well. The dynamic Casimir effect. It's a fun experiment. No one really talks about it. I like talking about the craziest experiments that people can't really explain or understand, where light gets produced from manipulating just the Casimir effect. So photons get basically, the way they explain it is the virtual photons get converted to real photons. So you mean basically light comes from nowhere? Yeah, exactly. Light just being pulled from space-time itself, like almost like you're squeezing the sponge of space-time and light is coming out of it. That to me is the greatest, because how do you even explain that without there being a 0 point energy out there? So I love the connection between, energy, mass, and then space-time and light as well.
Well, I was gonna ask you. So there's so many scientists out there that glaze this three body problem book. I hear so many of them talking about it, and it's like, how could there not be a connection? Because they're talking about dimensional physics in this three body problem. You're talking about flat surface, wormholes and stuff. This is a dimensional idea, right?
Oh yeah. That it's adding an extra dimension, one extra dimension, just one. And I mean, my mind is open to all the possibilities, but I personally believe this idea of like, there's not like aliens coming from the extra dimension, in my opinion. Now, I think you can ghosts and things like that can actually make sense, and spirits and like where our consciousness comes from. But I wouldn't think of the extra dimension as like, our bizarro versions are hanging out there or something like that. Though, who knows? Anything is technically possible. I think it more of like it's the representation of all that mass and energy when you add up everything that we see plus the 0 point energy, the fabric of our universe. When you add that all up, that's the ether. That's everything all combined. Like almost like if you were to look at a snow globe, it's like, okay, is the snow globe just the objects? No, the snow globe's the water in there and everything, and I shake it all up like that. Because when you then do that, now you say, okay, now I can do equations where I can say the matter, me, is interacting with the space-time, which I previously was discounting and saying was empty. But now I can say, okay, because that helps me represent where I am. Where is Ashton? Am I here in front of this screen, or am I over where you are, etc.? And then this also opens the door to all these Star Trek capabilities that we've been seeing. And I'm very careful about not shooting down the idea of like, you know, spiritual extra dimensional aliens or what have you, because honestly, this actually opens the door up to more options. And to me, then the next question is simply is like, is the many worlds hypothesis true? Which would mean that like, if I were to somehow go back in time, break causality, is that going to make a new universe? And therefore there must be infinite new universes everywhere and different, you know, paths that everybody's taking. Or is it more of this is the one and only universe and we're in a deterministic timeline and you either can't go back in time, or if you do go back in time, you're not changing anything. It was just always that way. To me, that's a tough question that maybe we can never answer, but that's the one that will determine, in my opinion, like how weird this all gets. There you go. Some esoteric stuff for you guys.
Thanks. How weird this all gets.
I love it.
One thing I did want to get into, I didn't want to kind of get off of where we were going, but there was like certain things that I've seen you kind of, I don't know if you mentioned it in your show, but I knew, I saw you tweet it and it caught my attention and actually made me think. I think you kind of said you had thought that it was possible that our government was using this technology when we bombed Iran.
Sorry, but what was the first part there?
That I saw you make a tweet saying that you thought it might have been possible that the way we went into Iran and did what we did and came back without getting caught or nothing, you suspect.
No, I think people are trying to say that I was saying that. I don't think we teleported our bombers over Iran. I don't think we need to do that, honestly. And I think that would be kind of like, why do that? Because you're just kind of exposing your capabilities if you do that. But I do think the angle that I was going on is that I think Iran was working on trying to get this technology, and that was just never going to happen. I think the cover was like, it's technically the Mossad are the ones that killed those 9 Iranian nuclear scientists. I don't know if you guys knew this, but they assassinated 9 Iranian nuclear scientists while they were sleeping simultaneously, supposing, according to the news articles, using a secret weapon. You know, call it whatever you will. To me, nukes are like an old thing. Like, we're not working on an A bomb. A bomb is something we dropped in 1945. That was 80 years ago. If you look at all the science around nuclear physics, it's all related to plasma, manipulating, controlling plasma. That's what those Iranian scientists would have been working on. In fact, that would mean they were definitely understood and working on the idea of 0-point energy. And that's what the CIA would never have let happen. And they would have, Mossad can probably act and do what they want, but they're working in concert with the CIA, presumably, or at least get their blessing. And that's the part where I think that's what's really going on in that season. When we're talking about like nukes, we're not scared of A bombs. We're scared someone's going to make like a black hole super weapon that has infinite energy that just wipes out the whole planet like instantly, either accidentally or intentionally. Yeah. So that's my take on that. And that's why I say people say like, oh, like a lot of people try to gaslight about Russia or Iran being more powerful than the United States. You have to be out of your absolute mind if you think that these countries are more powerful than the United States. Like, we just don't talk about our crazy stuff because we don't need to. Like, we don't need to. And that's why, anybody that goes against the United States on this planet is just going to get wiped out faster than they can possibly imagine. So people then say like, oh, well, why haven't we taken over China or Russia? It's like, well, how do you think that's going to play out? Like, what? Oh, okay, we conquer you now. Now you're Americans now. Like, it's not that simple. That's not how geopolitics really works. But, the response to the Iran conflict or whatever war, whatever they're calling it, 12-day war. I mean, China did nothing. Russia did nothing. That was their main ally, Iran was. And we just went and bombed them and walked out like nothing. Russia can't even get air superiority over Ukraine. Like, what, you think they're going to get air superiority over us? No way. So I think that was a big tell sign where people kind of had to wake up and go, okay, yeah, maybe the United States can do whatever they want. But again, that's my controversial take on the geopolitics side.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I actually made a comment last night that I had actually thought there might be a lot of wars or a lot of things going on because of people having certain technology and just other governments don't want you having it, Stargates and free energy and shit like that. That was just an idea that I've had. So, I guess you're kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah. And there's a lot of fun rabbit holes to go down on that front, because once you realize that they've got technology that's like free energy technology or teleportation, like that's stuff that nobody in the mainstream is talking about, them even broaching the idea of people having that level of technology. But once you realize that, it's like, oh, now you start to think of things in a whole different light. You know, it's like everything's a completely different perspective, even the way that they frame a lot of this stuff. I mean, the biggest scam is, of course, climate change, not because it's not potentially real, but because the people that are trying to gaslight us about the dangers of climate change have the solution. They have the solution of fusion. They just don't give it to us, you know? So I do think that understanding that we have this level of technology, you know, assuming that it is true and we do have it, which I'm convinced, of course. Yeah, it just changes perspective on everything geopolitically, frankly, and energy wise.
When you identify that all the governments of the world agree on UFOs in Antarctica, everything kind of comes into focus. It's like maybe there's a linkage between what they know about this stuff and how much they don't want to get bombed for saying anything about it. Because it is really like godlike power, and that's terrifying to all these smaller countries.
Yeah, imagine they had portals in, like, one of the ones I think about, which I'm not endorsing this particularly, but like the idea that what if Saddam Hussein wasn't building nukes? What if he had like a secret Stargate or something that he dug up?
I was going to say that.
East, right?
Tower of Babel.
I was going to
And
bring
it's like,
that up.
oh, okay, well, we had to go take that over or destroy it or something, right? Because we couldn't let them have that. We couldn't let them reverse engineer that technology or something. Or what if there's something in Antarctica under there where it's like buried under the ice and we just don't want people going near it and figuring it out? Like, those are the things that give me pause, because that's like what you would do if we figured this technology out. To me, I really struggle with, like, did we just naturally figure out teleportation and free energy stuff? Like, I feel like we got some help somewhere. And if you look at the last like 100 years of our advancement, we've gone like this. It's like we're building sentient AIs now, right? And like, you know, 100 years ago we were riding around on horses. So, you know, it feels a little too, and you could say, okay, we have this technology singularity that's happening clearly. But still, to me, I'm feeling like we got some help somewhere. Maybe we dug something up, maybe crash ship, maybe I don't know. Future humans, there's a lot of
1947.
Ashton, with the potential that Saddam Hussein had potential technology, with Iranians potentially having technology, and with the lore surrounding Nazi Germany with Die Glock, and I'm pronouncing that. Do you think that maybe that was probably one of the reasons we went in as well?
Yeah, the Die Glock thing, man, the Nazi Germany, there's so much lore around it. And I actually think like almost all the lore is true. Like, it's just really more of like, what's the
20%
common
at least
thread story that makes sense for all of it? And there's actually quite a few different stories that can make sense for it. But the Nazi one's really interesting because they were like spinning mercury, which is supposedly a way you can do anti-gravity as well. It would have been one of the first rudimentary ways to do it. And I found one of the scientists that I found is actually a literal Project Paperclip scientist. Like, I thought that was like a conspiracy theory thing. No, it's like a real thing. We just took the scientists from Germany, anyone that had prospects, like anyone that seemed like they could do something good. So we take this guy named Friedwart Winterberg. He studied under Werner Heisenberg, as in like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. That was his mentor. And he was like 15 years old or 18 years old or something like that. And we spotted him and, you know, said, okay, you're coming to America. You know, you're going to come teach us and it's crazy because he then worked on fusion and nuclear bombs and thermonuclear weapons and nobody knows about him because all his research was basically just classified. And so I read his textbook about nukes. In the very first page, it says they classified inertial confinement fusion because of thermonuclear weapon applications. And then that's probably why the world will never get fusion. Like the first page. You're going, okay, well, maybe we should listen to this Project Paperclip scientist who like came over, never got any credit, so probably has an axe to grind, and like they won't declassify his research, and he's just saying straight up that we just classified fusion. And of course we did. Makes sense too. Like, oh yeah, it's connected to H-bombs, connected to thermonuclear weapons.
Well, and one of the things that I've, I guess, tangentially noticed is that when you look at some of these places where they brought some of these scientists, especially the ones looking into physics, thermodynamics, space-time, and all that, and you look at where they placed them and where they were doing research, you also see a correlation with orbs appearing. One of them being Marfa in Texas. They're brought paperclip scientists there, and Roswell's another one, or outside of it, and you do see orbs there every now and then. And I just always found that really odd that the two exist. And causation is not correlation. I get that. However, it's a big big coincidence in my book.
Yeah, the orbs.
Even still, they could be studying it. You know, they could be there looking at these events that are natural and trying to figure out how to weaponize them. You know,
that's a real possibility. That's one of the hypotheses, is that, you know, people will say, okay, Ashton, you say that they've got these plasma orbs, right? But what I've been researching, okay, maybe they've had the plasma orbs since like the 2000s. That's pretty much where the science kind of culminates on humanity figuring out how to get your plasma orb to fly around, based on the scientific papers. Working on in the 90s, figured it out 2000s. Now you got plasma drone. But people are saying, oh, people are seeing these in the, you know, the Foo Fighters in the 20s is a good example, right? So how do you explain that? Well, one of the answers to explain that is, well, we basically just saw the aliens or other civilizations flying around their plasma orbs, and we're like, oh, we can do that? That's cool. How do they do that? And they just use electromagnetic theory, and they just reverse engineer it and then figure out, oh, we can make a plasma orb too. So that's one possibility for sure. But I do think that if you look at the history of it, of the UFO topic, a lot of things went from flying saucers in the 70s, 80s, 90s even, to the 2000s, 2010 specifically, shifting to orbs. Specifically, I would say plasma orbs with balls of light, basically, balls of energy, if you want to think of them like that. And that's definitely connected to exotic vacuum objects, Ken Shoulders' research, Hal Puthoff's research, and what those guys were doing. And no one really knows because they haven't looked into that and it seems so esoteric. But once you demystify it for people, show people the papers like the Dense Plasma Focus paper by Frank Mead and George Miley, where they're literally just talking about, in the abstract, we're going to make this plasma orb. It's going to have jets on it, and we're going to use it for gravity waves and use it for high energy lasers. You're like, oh, okay, so there it is, 2005. Like, Air Force was clearly working on it. That's why I think we're seeing more of them. Is that, and the other big thing is they're drones. It's not somebody flying around in the flying saucer. They realize it's a big liability. If you have to like make your thing airtight, now you have to have an air supply inside your flying saucer, especially if you're going to warp drive it somewhere, you know? So the solution is don't have anybody inside of it. Just have it be a drone. Maybe, in fact, the aliens are almost certainly using drones too. Why would they come down and visit us in person? They just send a drone to come by. So I do think there's a good possibility that they kind of, you know, reverse engineered it. And then to me, it's the crazy part is I can't even really narrow it down. I can't even tell you like, oh yeah, it definitely came from extraterrestrials, or, you know, an ancient civilization like Theory of Atlantis, or heck, even the future human hypothesis. I used to think that was silly and absurd. And then you realize like, oh no, we can actually manipulate space-time. So, okay, if you can go back in time, then we could be manipulating our own timeline. And maybe the people gatekeeping this are like the timeline police or something, you know?
Timeline police. It makes me think of like a movie where there was, I think Jackie Chan might have been in it. He was going through like different timelines, I think, of his own soul. His own self, and he was like knocking them off.
No, that was Jet Li 1, bro.
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
sorry, yeah.
Jet Li.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jackie Chan.
My mind goes straight to Hiro Nakamura.
Doug, did you have any questions before we move forward? Just wanted not to put you on the spot. I'm just, just wanted to ask.
Which I would like to ask him, because he mentioned the spiritual side of it, or the interdimensional side of it. And then as we're talking about 0 points or conception points, I'm friends with Dr. Greg Little, and I talked with him about a month ago, and he co-wrote a book with Andrew Collins called The Origins of the Gods. And basically he talked about, you hear about all these encounters and things in the old world, if we coin that term, because like the electromagnetic status of the earth was more pure. And now with all the microwaves and Wi-Fi and cell phones, it's really polluted the electromagnetic field. So it's kind of made it hard for these things to manifest. But he talks about plasma in that book. And in the 1970s, they had that apparition of Mary in Egypt above that cathedral. And this was like a big phenomenon back then. I mean, millions of people gathered around and seen this thing and documented it and had photos and video, all that kind of stuff. But his research, he was saying that a lot of these apparitions of these plasma balls and fields kind of held common themes with ley lines and also fault lines. And he was talking about this maybe is something that's generating under the earth like a natural energy, and it's popping out like a cracking concrete, trying to find the least resistance and can escape. And he said that basically he was of the opinion that these things are basically like gateways or tears or portals, like you were talking about earlier. And he says that maybe extra dimensional or spiritual entities use these as insertion points or ways to communicate with humanity. I just didn't know, since you guys had brought that up, if you've heard him talk about that or heard that idea, or what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard ley lines and all and those concepts. I think that the ley line concept's interesting for the same reason as like what is the base structure of the universe reason. Because if there is some structure to the universe, then you would think, why is there not structure to like the sun or to the earth? And we just don't see it because it's invisible to us. So I think it could be possible, but I haven't been super compelled by the ley line arguments. I do think that there's an interesting argument that you were making earlier, though, as well, about like, he's saying that it might be harder to manifest certain spiritual aspects when we're polluted with this electromagnetic spectrum. Because again, we don't see it, but everything around us is emitting electromagnetic waves all the time, especially in today's day and age where we use electricity all the time. That would be a really interesting thing if someone could study that somehow and figure out, because I like to think of the 0 point energy as like the white noise that's going around in the background. So you could imagine that as the civilization gets more and more advanced, you do have this pollution that could be occurring, and we don't even recognize it because we don't ever see it at all. But if there are entities that are more connected to that 0 point energy, maybe they don't see the same way we see. Maybe they see it as pollution everywhere else, where it's like stopping them from coming here. That would be pretty interesting. I'd never really thought about that. So thanks for presenting that interesting idea for me,
Doug. That actually did pique me. Real quick. I just want to mention this. You're talking about ley lines, but I have also thought of, if you look at birds and you look at natural weather, if there is any natural weather anymore, and it's something that I think we've even spoken about when when Lisa basically covered the morning chorus with the birds. There is things kind of above us that is almost like ley lines on the ground, but like now in the air. I do wonder if like that has something to do with any of that stuff. Have you ever thought of that or stuff like that?
Well, here, let me tell you about something that's, pretty scientifically accepted. There's a peer-reviewed paper that came out in the last year where they were able to take just a metal tube using a specific alloy. And based on how they aligned it to the Earth's magnetic field, it would produce voltage. Like if it was aligned the right way, it produced voltage, free energy. You would say, well, where's that coming from? Technically, you're technically sapping the Earth of energy. I mean, you're not doing it in an appreciable amount, but that's where that's coming from. And the crazy part is if they turned it 90 degrees, the tube didn't work anymore because it's now no longer aligned with magnetic fields. And it had to be perfectly aligned. So you could imagine like tweaking it and all of a sudden this thing zaps you because it's producing electricity. I mean, very tiny amount. So that's why I think that like there clearly is obviously this connection between the field, the magnetic fields, the direction of the magnetic fields, etc. I think that people just kind of take it in a more esoteric aspect when they say, okay, well, these specific directions and these specific points at these locations. But certainly, of course, certain locations, just like with that experiment, certain locations are better than other locations because of either how high you are off the ground or what have you. So yeah, there's definitely at a minimum, element of truth to that idea.
Yeah. And I even do think the sun is somehow possibly involved.
Sure. I mean, if you believe in the electromagnetic, electric theory of the universe or plasma theory of the universe, then you know that there's electromagnetic fields coming from the sun, are helping to stabilize our entire solar system, essentially. Or there may even be these giant galaxy level magnetic fields that are wrapping around our entire galaxy, which could explain why the stars on the edges of the galaxies are rotating as fast as they are when they should be rotating a lot slower. So that's where I think it's funny. You look at the conventional classical view of physics, there's all these gaps in it that they can't explain. Dark energy, dark matter. They have no idea where mass comes from or gravity comes from, just exists. I think it's a fundamental force. It's not. And you realize, if they just thought about things in a like slightly more esoteric way, like a slightly different conceptual viewpoint, like all those problems just go away. They all go away.
What is your, not to throw this question out there randomly. What is your opinion on gravity?
On gravity? Gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. So the 0-point energy, this ocean of energy we're in, well, wherever there's divots in it, that's gravity, right? So when we have a massive Earth or the sun sitting in that field of 0-point energy, it pulls everything towards it. That's gravity. So I think of it as the 0-point energy is the fabric of the space-time. And when you're distorting that fabric, that's where the gravity is coming from. So how do I create gravity? Distort the fabric. So this is exactly why you add energy to a region. Just like if you were adding a planet to a region, you're going to create gravity. So that's how I view gravity. And there's a good paper by Hal Puthoff, 1989, Gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force, where he's probably not the first person, but I like his paper because he's prestigious. People know him. And he connected electromagnetism to gravity. I mean, it had already been unified like 100 years ago, but he does the equations, shows the math, shows Einstein's equation, goes, look, there it is. And, you know, people tried to critique it, but he countered the critiques as well. And I think we're just at a point. I mean, that was 1989. So 36 years ago, he wrote that paper. Maybe now we're ready to accept that that's how things really work. I don't know.
Awesome.
Oh, by the way, Al
ocean-
Puthoff also was big into remote viewing too. So, you know, this goes to show that he was at least thinking about the idea that this 0-point energy was more than just gravity manipulation, you know, more like, is there a connection to the conscious?
Yeah, that is a good point.
But it's sort of like an informational field, which goes back into plasma, because plasma seems to have self-organizing properties. And if that's connected to this informational field, it kind of makes sense why there would be this linkage between plasma physics and stuff like remote viewing.
Yeah, I never knew what plasma physics was all about before this. You know, I'm like, why do we care so much about plasma? What's plasma physics all about? Now I'm like, oh, it's all plasma physics. It's like all plasma physics, because we're realizing, like, where does electricity come from? Electricity is just an asymmetry, a positive and negative charge being separated. You separate a positive and negative charge, electricity will form. You think about it from that conceptual viewpoint, you go, okay, well, what is a plasma? A plasma is separating the negative charge, the electron, from the positive charge, the ion. Oh, what? That's the same thing as electricity. No wonder plasma is so important. Plasma is basically the base form of what we're doing with electricity. And then I saw some people in the chat mentioning cymatics. Like a Bose-Einstein condensate is functionally, in my opinion, the equivalent of taking matter, taking plasma, whatever, and turning it into a coherent form, shape, using frequency, using wavelengths, using resonance. Because again, everything is waves. So the way we should be thinking about is, how are we getting these two waves to interact? If this wave is going like this and this wave is like longer, like what happens when they meet? What happens when they interact with one another? You know, that's how I think people should be thinking about it.
And that goes back to the cavitation effect and the light being created in the bubble.
Yeah.
It's
So you're
right
talking
there.
about sonoluminescence. Sonoluminescence is one of the cooler experiments where they take sound waves in water and light forms where they meet. You know, you create a scale, an interference in the middle, you get this cavitation effect. And it's hard for classical physics to explain that. Where's the light coming from? You just put sound in water and light is coming out of nowhere. Like, you know, that's pretty unusual. And people would question, is there fusion happening there? Is that where the light's, you know, coming from? I think when you just think about it in terms of waves and mixing waves, makes a lot more sense. I mean, still kind of hard to wrap our brains around because we live in this 3D world where we think of everything as a physical object. But when you move away from it, thinking everything's a physical object, then we really open our minds up to a lot more possibilities for sure.
All the talk of water and waves. I just recently heard a term looking into some of this stuff before you came on, and I heard people talking about space foam. Is that like the scientific kind of term for these waves and waters that everything kind of rests in, where there's like void space? Or what is space foam?
Yeah, I think, was it Tom Bearden? I think he said he thought of the ether, the 0-point energy, as like little bubbles. Like, so if you were to really boil it down to the small scale, what would it look like? It would look like little bubbles in like a bubble wall, basically, because at some small level, there must be some structure, right? That's the idea behind it. So if you think about these little bubbles, it's easier to understand because you're walking through these bubbles. What's that going to do? It's going to resist you, right? It's going to cause a force to push back. That's inertia. That's what inertia is. Why can I not accelerate to the speed of light, even in outer space? I mean, on the Earth, it's because of the friction of the air. But even in outer space, I can't accelerate to the speed of light. Why? Because of the 0-point energy is slowing me down. That's the reason. That's what inertia is. Another thing you were talking about was the fluid. So they actually came up with a term for the whole study of the plasma, because the plasma acts like a fluid. They call it magnetohydrodynamics, MHD. Magnetohydrodynamics. Sometimes you'll hear it called different versions of that. But what that means is they create the plasma, and now you treat it like a liquid. And because it's flowing around different directions, what are you trying to do? We're trying to stabilize it. We're trying to figure out, how can we stabilize this plasma? How can we get this plasma to do what we want? Well, there's a whole field of physics around it called magnetohydrodynamics. So for the people that didn't know what that term meant, MHD, now you do. Anytime you see MHD, they're talking about manipulating plasma with magnetic fields, getting it to do what you want.
Awesome. One thing I wanted to kind of touch on is that I think you kind of mentioned Lockheed Martin a few times. I thought it was interesting how you were kind of showing like some of the stuff that they're kind of coming out with now that I think you're saying is proving that they've been using this stuff for a minute. Right? Is there anything on that you wanted, like, maybe could specifically touch on?
Well, for Lockheed Martin, I mean, their compact fusion reactor, that's got to be I mean, how are we not just like having congressional hearings? I mean, from all public available data, from the guy that built it, literally saying it's successful, that means they have a working fusion reactor that's compact, meaning like can fit in my house, isn't going to fit in some giant power plant like that. That's free energy for everybody. Like, this is the thing where I'm just like, how do people reconcile the fact that Lockheed Martin just has a compact fusion reactor? They're just not telling us about it. And they've had 7 years minimum to tell us about it, probably longer than that. And we're just okay with them hiding that while this big charade of fusion, pretending like we're researching fusion, trying to figure it out when Lockheed Martin's already had it solved. That's the thing that I just can't wrap my brain around. In fact, let's play this video here, a little intermission for us, because I have the Lockheed Martin. This is from their website. Like, this is the guy that helped develop this. Let's just listen to this video here, and we'll listen to this. Is Thomas
Fusion
Wire.
is a much safer option.
Oh,
A next generation of airplanes that doesn't rely on fuel and can just stay aloft, unlimited range, unlimited endurance. That's what nuclear fusion can do for an airplane. We put it in a magnetic bottle that can contain the high temperatures. You need hundreds of millions of degrees. We can release in a controlled fashion net energy. We think we have a very robust strategy going forward that has potential for success. What this concept does is it's a high beta concept, which means we use a high fraction of the magnetic field pressure. We use all of its potential. And that means we can make our devices 10 times smaller. So instead of something the size of a building, we have something the size of a large truck. The small is the reason we can do this quickly. If something's small, you can build up momentum, you can develop it fast. It doesn't take 5 years to design it, it takes 3 months. We can design it, build it, test it in under a year. We can do several of these cycles, and we think we can get to a prototype in 5 years. Every time you do plasma physics, you learn something new. And that's why this is a high-risk, high-payoff endeavor. That's what we're doing here, is testing that concept out to see if it really holds the promise that it appears to. And as a defense company, our increasing mission is to enhance global security, and this is how we do that in the energy realm. Gas turbines are a huge improvement over other technologies in terms of climate change, but they're only a 50% improvement. We take it all the way. So no emissions, safe operation, proliferation free. That means we can ship it to the whole world with a good conscience. Now, the old promise of atoms for peace was a noble one, but ultimately flawed because the technology wasn't right for it. We can achieve that grand vision and bring clean power to the world. The true atomic age can start. 10 years, we have great military vehicles. 20 years, we have clean power for the world. This isn't online by 2100. This is online by the time I can't even retire after we finish this. You know, I still have to find another job after this is done.
Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. configuration there looks just like Friedwart Winterberg's fusion design, thermonuclear designs as well, with the ring on the inside. Basically, they use a tube, and then there's an outer ring on the outer side is how they make those devices. A couple things I want to point out there. He says, we could have this in 5 years. That video's from like 2014. That video's from 2014. Well, what happened, bro? It's 2025 now. Where did it go? The guy that literally, that wasn't the guy. That guy was one of the main engineers, but Charles Chase is the guy that like oversaw the whole thing, that convinced the CXOs. He said it was all successful. It says unlimited endurance, unlimited range. They're saying that fusion can cause your plane to stay in the air forever, never have to come down ever again. No emissions whatsoever. Yeah, the crazy part about this is someone pointed in the chat is that this is actually just all real. Like, that's the craziest part about all this, is they're literally just real. It's just there. Like, there you go. There's your thing. And somebody asked, like, how are they doing fusion? If fusion supposedly takes 100 million degrees, how are those orbs doing fusion? How can they do compact fusion reactor like that while everybody else is struggling? Well, one, the theory says that it takes 100 million degrees, or even 1 billion degrees if you're doing aneutronic fusion, which is what they're doing, by the way. So how are they doing that? Clearly, they're looking at the universe in a different way than everybody else is. If you just listen to Helion Fusion, who's also doing field reverse configuration, their CXO or CEO in one of their publicly available YouTube videos says straight up, the theory says that it should take like 100 EVs or whatever to cause fusion to happen in these aneutronic fusion reactions. Experimentally, they're seeing that 10 times lower than that. 10 times lower than that, experimentally. The other difference, first of all, is theory versus actual experimentation. The second thing is that when we talk about the temperatures needed, we have to stop thinking about it in terms of actual just temperature. That's not what they're doing. We're not just heating it up. We're pressurizing it. When we put pressure on something, it does heat up. It's the pressure that what causes fusion, because we have to overcome the Coulomb barrier. It's not just making it hotter. That's why I think hot fusion is such a stupid way to think about it. That's not really not what's happening. We want to be thinking about it as we're making a gravitational well that's causing things to come together. That's probably the more accurate way to think about it from the realistic perspective. But long story short, they are causing, with plasma, they cause things to come together. And with the orbs, the way you should imagine is you've got this plasma ball, but we've got two ends on it. So one end, you got this air coming in, getting ionized, turned into plasma, and then it's like a traffic jam. It's getting pushed through this squeeze for this little tube, and the magnetic field lines are squeezing it together. So what does that do? Oh, slows it down. It gets stuck. That matter coming in through the front is kind of getting stuck. And then when it's getting pressed together, boom, there you go. You got fusion. That's exactly what we need to have happen. So I think the big thing they figured out is stop trying to like perfectly confine it. Let the plasma do what it wants to do. The plasma wants to shoot jets out. Use them, control the jets. And then where that jets shoot through your plasma ball, use that as the fusion, where you're going to have the fusion occur. The last bit is this. How do you manage the heat? Because even if that, okay, you are creating these pressures that are causing fusion to occur, there should be thermal heat coming out of this thing. You have to have really good thermal regulation. And so they figured out several ways to do this. I think it's Charles Chase or somebody else I found, I think, has plasma actuators. Basically, it's like the shear of the plasma going over the surface can be like turned into electricity. And then the other thing we found is that there's like thermoelectric generators they can use too. So they've clearly figured out some additional technology to basically manage the heat that's coming out of that so that it stays at a very like room temperature level. Because when we look at those plasma balls, they were like the same temperature as like the air and the plane. They weren't like red hot or anything like that. So even if in the middle there's this red hot thing happening, it must get cooled by the time it gets to like the edge of the bubble. There you go. That's my best guess at that.
Thank you.
Well, it could also be a geometric factor, you know, like the geometric fields that they're generating actually do create that compression. And so, you know, looking at it from that perspective, you can kind of understand why they would want to do it in the open air and not have that confinement.
And they might be able to work underwater too. I think those orbs are probably transmedium. I think that the place where they would work the least well is actually in outer space, because I think they're actually using the air to pre-ionize to like add plasma to the reaction. And so I think they designed those orbs to imagine they would be used in our atmosphere and maybe underwater as well, if they can ionize the hydrogen out of the water and use that. But I think you need a different solution if you're going to go outer space, which maybe is that teleportation thing. And there's definitely a geometrical aspect, no question, to all of this, which is the thing that I've been tiptoed around the most, because a lot of people call it sacred geometry. I don't really care what the geometry is that allows it to work, but absolutely, if you start digging into wormholes and nukes, you will find that they both are heavily reliant on geometry. Heavily reliant on geometry. In fact, that's all it's all about. With the geometry of nukes, what they're trying to figure out is, if we are trying to ignite a fusion reaction, how do I get the waves to hit it at the exact right point in a way where it'll cause that fusion reaction, that fusion bomb to go off? That's how they were thinking about it. So Freibart-Winterberg has this polyhedral configuration, geometric configuration, perfect equilateral triangle around your fusion detonation. And I saw that in his textbook. I'm going, wow, looks just like the orbs in the videos. Like, made me even wonder, second guess, like maybe the lithium in the plane was being used as a fusion bomb, and those orbs were the triggers essentially to make it go off. I can't say for sure, but still possible. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there, but yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. The other thing was the wormhole. There's also a polyhedral wormhole configuration. I can't believe that when I found it. I can't believe how many. There's like 5 different kinds of wormholes. I thought there was just like one, but no, there's like all these different kinds. One of them is a spinning configuration, and you can mix the spinning configuration with a polyhedral configuration, which creates a flat face surface. The benefit being, if you need negative energy, this minimizes the amount of negative energy you need, because you're not trying to move this huge region like this. You're just trying to make a flat surface. So what you're really doing is you're making like a mirror. And what they do is they stitch together 2 points. So you say, okay, my negative energy, all I have to do is stitch together this flat face surface, and I'm going to connect here to over here. And then if I go through over here on this side, right, now all of a sudden I just appear over here. But it's only a temporary wormhole too. It's not a permanent portal. And this was one of the other things I found, was that if you read the non-locality paper, Defense Intelligence Reference Document by John Kramer, he talks about we may not be able to make like permanent portals, because this idea of time becomes really fuzzy. Like, your flow of time might not be the same over here as it is over here. We just assume it is because we're all on Earth. Our flow of time is all the same because we're all on the same planet. But if you were on a planet that's a lot more massive than our planet, your gravity would be different, and therefore your flow of time would be different compared to our flow of time. So if you imagine a portal between a super heavy planet and our planet, if you were looking through it, one side would look like they're moving in super speed, and the other side would look like they're moving in slow-mo. So that would be very bizarre if you were to like go through that. What happens when like your arm goes through it, and now your arm is moving in slow-mo, but your rest of your body's on the other side? Like, this is the reason why I think, even from like just a thinking about it perspective, it would start to get really weird on how that could work.
Right. But I think there's precedent to kind of look at these things as side effects of what they were originally trying to do. And so you could see how these type of side effects could have, massive implications that nobody's even thought of yet.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest one is like, are you going to break the time stream? Like, if we can go back in time, that would be the biggest fear. My fears were somewhat alleviated reading the same John Kramer paper, where he says that all the OG physicists that figured out atom bombs and all this stuff, they believe that nature wasn't going to let us go back in time, that somehow like quantum entanglement would break down or something when you try to do that. And they actually worked around it. They built a teleportation protocol just assuming that you can't go back in time, but with no retrocausality. They created an EPR experiment where they can control the length of the path of one of the 2 entangled photons. And they say, okay, don't make it go back in time. Just make it be exactly like instant transmission, because that way there's no retrocausality. Like, what's the fastest you can go without going back in time? Instant, like instant teleportation from one point to the next, right? That way there's no retrocausality issue. So that's what they built. And that's crazy, because that would mean that if that's what's happening in the plane video, that would mean there's something at the destination. I mean, they've created like, here's point A and here's point B, and they've engineered the 2 points. So that would mean it's more of like a warp gate or something like that, right? In sci-fi, where like you have to have something at this point where it's like actually connecting those, and then you flick it on, and then you go through, and then you appear at the other side.
Ashton, I was going to say, doesn't this somewhat have a basis in the Wu experiment when she was looking at ultra weak electromagnetic forces, and then, you know, they moved her over to the Manhattan Project. But also the new papers that have come out about neutrinos, how they're traveling back in time, so to speak. Would that all be related to what you are discussing?
I think of neutrinos as like the ether. I think that's the mainstream, like the relic neutrinos is the way they like. I think that when they're talking about neutrinos, they're talking about like subatomic particles. Everything below electrons and atoms, to me, like I think of as like when physicists are talking about it, I think of it as like a fuzzy concept, not something that's like super hard, because we don't see that stuff. It's really more of how we kind of conceptualize it. So that's how I think about the neutrino aspect. Sorry, what was the other thing that you were saying?
Oh, about the Wu experiment, how she capitalized on the weak.
So people should check out my interview with Dr. Yu from NASA. Dr. Yu from NASA, who has a Yuan theory, his unification theory, that everything is just magnetism. Because he has a really good experiment of how this is possible, where he says, okay, you imagine your two atoms that are repelling each other. They don't want to come together. Now just imagine that it's a magnet where it's got positive north and negative south. And this is the reason why they're, you know, two norths are going to repel each other. Okay. But what happens if I flip this one over? Now the south is facing this way. Now they're going to come together. And he says, what if this is how it's really working? What if we have these extra degrees of freedom? Everything is just spinning little spheres. And it seems like they can't come together, but all we have to do is just reorient it. If we just reorient it, now they'll, boom, come together. That would be, anyone who's researched nuclear physics, you know, if you start to figure something like that out, like you're going dark, because now you've figured out how we can do fusion really easily, potentially. Because once you figure out the mechanism for flipping around that spin, manipulating that spin, now you can get rid of the Coulomb barrier, essentially, the thing holding it back.
Well, it reminds me of, and when you look at I guess not the prototype, but the actual mechanism of the guy from Lockheed Martin that you just showed with the film, if you look at it on Google, it almost looks like a mitochondria, you know, within the cell, which powerhouses the cell, right? Mitochondria itself somewhat has fusion itself by combining photons into, you know, utilizing that as its currency. But what it also does is it also produces its own light, and it also produces its own water. And with mitochondria, it can also produce waves to manipulate. I guess it's like a preprint paper that came out that was talking about how it can send out signals in a plasma formation or form. So so when we showed that mechanism, kid was showing, I was like, oh my God, that looks like mitochondria.
It's funny because they literally, the two ways to stabilize plasma I saw, one is axial rotation. The other one is a helical rotation. Helical meaning DNA, right? A spiral. And if you play this video that I just pulled out, I think you're going to enjoy this. What does plasma do in outer space in 0G? If you just put some dust into it so that you give it some substance, and they just let the plasma do its own thing, it forms structures. It begins to naturally form structures in 0G. Can you pull up this video here? I think it'll be a fun one to watch, because it's going to connect to those ideas that you're talking about. I'm just going to mute it because it might be a copyright thing or whatever. I think the music's fine. But you can see here, look at the plasma form these structures. You can even see these tendrils being formed from it. So why is this important? Because we're seeing these electrostatic forces. We're seeing those nuclear forces. That's why it's doing this. So whatever it's structuring into, it has to be because of these forces. One of the cool things they're going to show here in a second is that a void just naturally forms. Like just a black circle void forms where the plasma just goes all around it. It almost looks like a black hole. So this is a Russian experiment that these guys were testing. That's why we've got the subtitles here. And so, yeah, because of their repulsion and attraction, they form this lattice structure. Look at that lattice structure right there. You can see the structure basically being formed from it. And then they would see this empty void appear in the middle of the lattice structure. Look at that void. How crazy is that? That's just in 0G. Plasma floating around in 0G. A natural void just forms. Look at that. That's insane. But the best part is coming up here in a second. is that the plasma also doesn't just organize like this, where it almost looks like a squid or something creepy. It also forms to explain galaxies. And it also will form to explain, there's your galaxy right there. Look at that. Look at how fast the stars at the edges, or these are just little particles of dust. But this explains, like, we don't need dark matter. There's your answer right there. The edges are spinning almost as fast as the center because it's just plasma in space. And then the last part is the DNA. The plasma also forms double helix structures naturally in outer space as well. So it goes to show that these double helix structures must be a natural phenomenon. Look at that.
Yeah.
This is the craziest to me, looking at that. Like, that looks just like a double helix. So that's one of my favorite videos on plasma, when I'm trying to get people involved. Be like, why is plasma cool? It's like, have you seen what it does in outer space when it's just floating around freely? Pretty cool.
Well, it almost gives a nod to vortex math and some of those concepts of 369. And then you look at secret societies and how they kind of manipulate their sigils and what have you. And when you look at these sigils almost manipulate what formations are made in biological structure. And I think biological structures, yes, they are intelligent themselves, but I think they are following, what is it? Nature follows the path of ease, right? Pick the most complicated. It's not a female. It's not going to pick the most complicated, anything. It's going to follow the path of least resistance. And I think that is what we're seeing, whether it is with the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio or plasma forming into helical structures. It's basically showing you what the plasma itself is doing, I think, in my opinion.
You're right. The vortex structures are connected to all of this. And I'm not somebody, I don't really care about the, imagery or numerology. If that stuff connects, it connects, right? Great. For me, that's how I view it. I'm not saying I'm not discrediting it, but it is. The vortex stuff, people like, that's in the science. Vortex motion related to it is like, the way they view it is the same way where you'd view pulling the drain on your bathtub. It's like you pull the drain on your bathtub and a vortex forms. It's an extra dimensional vortex, right? Like when we look at it on the surface, it just looks like a ring. But if you were to measure it, you could see that this is actual vortex pulling through the medium. That's how you can look at the 0 point energy when we're interacting with it as well. And in fact, it's gone so far as they're solving those vortex equations, solving Schrodinger's equations. And then you would ask, like, what could you do if you could solve that vortex? What if you could solve that vortex in the ether that we can't physically see because it's extra dimensional? Could you like actually control entanglement? Could you cause something to appear here and over here and be connected to one another? I think the answer is yes. And I think that's how they figured out teleportation, was first figure out how we can actually control the ether, control the medium. And now you can get things that look like magic to begin to happen.
Victor Schauberger was writing about that. He was another one of these Operation Paperclip type scientists who started over in Austria and then came to America, had all of his papers stolen, and he was just kicked out. It's like, you're fired now. We're taking all this stuff. Unreal.
Yeah, and Tesla, there were a lot of guys that were probably like 100 years before their time, honestly. And you think back, going that far, those people had no chance. You were never going to convince people that were riding around on horses and what have you, that, you could levitate and things like that they were saying, or that free energy was possible. I mean, those people were living in, at the time we were living in a material world where you couldn't think of stuff that was esoteric like that. The idea that an object is a wave, I mean, that's even too far out there for most people right now, 2025. So that's what makes this so difficult for people. And that's why I think that the best thing that we can do, people ask me, like, why are you not building something? Why are you not doing whatever? It's like, building something is not going to help. People are already building it and they just get ignored, discredited, or whatever. It's like, we have to demystify this. We have to like actually break it down for people to be like, okay, no, like actually matter is really a wave. So that means we can do, a matter wave and things like that, and explain like, what can we actually do with this stuff? Talk about it in a normal way, not talk about it and laugh about it like they do on mainstream media when they talk about aliens and stuff like that. Like, oh, turns out we can make a replicator with this. That's my favorite one. Star Trek replicator. People can get their minds around that. They go, wait, we can make a replicator? Doesn't that like free everything forever? Yes, exactly. Unlimited abundance. The end of scarcity.
Yeah.
Well, even that double slit experiment they did a while back, they were going back and forth if it was a wave or a particle. And from my understanding, and like I said, I'm a Southern man, so I'm a little slow, but from what I took from it was that they had come to the conclusion that it was basically both.
Yeah.
That
How
when you
big
observe
both,
it, it's a wave. When you observe it, it's almost like it has a consciousness. But when you're not observing it, it turns into a particle. So I thought that was pretty wild concept.
I mean, that's the reason why it's the most mysterious experiment in all of physics. I mean, my interpretation is that it's not a particle, is that we give it a particle-like quality to explain it in our reality. But the answer is it's always was a wave. And I think where Einstein was wrong, because Einstein actually won his Nobel Prize in the photoelectric effect, which was we take a piece of metal and we shoot light at it, and the electrons are going to get ripped off the metal. So we know that should happen from a physics perspective. What we did not expect is that if I increase the brightness of the light, we'd expect the electrons to get shot off faster. Like, that's just normal physics. If I increase the intensity, there should be more energy. Therefore, the electrons should get shot off at a higher speed. But that didn't happen. The electrons were getting shot off at the same speed, even when I increased the brightness of the light. But that doesn't make sense. If I push on a rock harder, the rock's going to move further, right? Simple physics. So what was going on? So Einstein, all these scientists came up with, how do we explain this? Well, there's another mystery. They figured out how to make the electrons shoot out faster. And it's not increasing the brightness. It's by changing the color of the light. What? Well, what is changing the color of the light? Changing the color of the light is changing the frequency of the light. So it's not increasing the brightness and the intensity. It's changing the wavelength of the light, causes the electron to either shoot at higher or lower. So Einstein thought, oh, well, there must be this magical quantum of light. We'll call it a photon, this quantum of light, this packet of light. And the packet size can change. And that's how it's interacting with that. I think that's retarded. No offense. I think that's stupid. But because the answer is resonance. Once you told me that it's the color of the light changing the intensity, the answer is frequency. The answer is if I have this wave going like this and this wave's exactly the same, there's going to be a significant reaction. They're going to cancel each other out perfectly. But if one of them is just going like this and the other one's going crazy, there's going to be a different reaction. Maybe there'll be very little reaction in that case. So resonance is the answer, which is sad because it would mean that Tesla was right about everything. Energy, frequency, and vibration is all of it. And that would mean that Einstein, when he went down with his photon and particle interpretation, like set us back really far, because that mindset is what's holding us back. That mindset that everything's a particle, because we really desperately want this to be a physical object. But when you look at it and you boil it down, this isn't a physical, this is mostly empty. This cup is mostly empty. And the only reason why I didn't go through the cup is because the electrons in this cup repel the electrons in my hand. That's the real way the world works. We just don't perceive it that way.
Yes. Exactly. Headless, I don't know if you're trying to say something, but you're muted.
Sorry. Supercooled hydrogen-4 creates a superfluid that can go through any object. So is it really going through the object, or is it just not going along with the same sort of frequency?
Yeah,
that's the real question, right?
Right.
Superfluid helium.
Yeah, superfluid helium too. And then that's the thing is that when we bring some of these liquids to like near zero, they begin to act like a quantum. We see quantum effects occur. They act in one big unison. You can watch these ferrofluids, are some of the fun things to watch, but this is the same idea as a Bose-Einstein condensate. The Bose-Einstein condensate begins to act in unison, and we see these quantum effects occur. So when we are trying to cheat and create free energy, almost all the concepts for free energy manipulate quantum mechanics, because in the quantum level, a pendulum never stops. At the quantum level, the pendulum's always going back and forth, it's always jiggling, which means there's infinite energy there. So if we can somehow scale that up, we can take that effect and make it big, macroscopic, there's your free energy. So a lot of the best designs that I've reviewed for microchips and what have you, that's what they're doing. They're just like, oh, we found this crazy quantum effect that never stops, and now we're just trying to scale it up.
Absolutely.
Anybody have any other questions or anything that you wanted to get in? Or I did have one thing, and maybe it might be too long, but I just think for our listeners, it might be interesting because I heard you mention it recently. I think you were even mentioning Peter Thiel and Sam Altman kind of being involved in this stuff. What's your thoughts on that? We have our opinion of Peter Thiel too. It's probably the same thing as yours. I think you said the Antichrist.
Well, I mean, he talks about it's weird, but I mean, I don't hate the guy. I don't really.
Oh yeah. I just don't trust.
He's definitely got insider information. You know, so it's like, you know, you apply the same stuff that happens to Congress. Congress is like, Nancy Pelosi has the best stock market portfolio like there is, like 70% gains or something like that. It's like, obviously she has inside information, right? Because she's connected to people that are in the know, what have you. Same thing is true for Peter Thiel. I mean, that's why he's connected to the CIA. He's connected to people that know about this technology, and therefore they know where to invest. They know what to do. They, in some cases, probably have backroom sweetheart handshake deals already in place. And this is how the CIA controls these people too. If they tell you, oh, hey, go invest in helium fusion because field reverse configuration fusion's the secret, and they're going to be the one that's successful, you go invest all your money there, you will be a trillionaire in the future. But here's the drawback. Now you got to do whatever we say, right? We own you now, pretty much. That's my opinion of Peter Thiel and all these other people. I think they're just complete phonies, and I think they've basically just been elevated to this level. I hate that we give them status like they're better than other people, like their opinion means more than other people, because it doesn't at all. They were basically just selected to be that thing. So I don't have a huge amount of respect for Peter Thiel, and I also don't like what Palantir is doing, because I know that Palantir is basically just taking all the data that's available on the internet about you, and they're making a profile of you. Doesn't even have to say your name. And they still know who you are. They probably know you better than you know you, but they just give it some dummy number. And this is how they get around privacy violations. And then if the law enforcement, if you ever do something illegal, they'll just say, okay, it turns out that, you know, Ashton Forbes was X12345. Now they have a whole profile for you. Now Palantir just spits it to law enforcement. They know everything you've ever done in your whole life, and they have it all packaged, ready to go, where you've ever lived, everything like that. For a lot of people, they would say that's a privacy issue. Absolutely. I mean, sure. But at the same time, we're not going backwards, man. People aren't using the internet less and less. You know, that's going to happen no matter what. My answer to that is make the tools available for everybody. Let the public use those tools. Let the public know what's out there about, if I search for me, what I find. That way I can control what I put out there and know what's available for people, including law enforcement.
Well said. Lisa, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a quick comment. Just going back to I guess the technology you were talking about with the missing plane when it disappeared, in that the disinformation people, the people that are coming out saying that it's fake, you know, and what have you, would you think that some of these people that are saying that is a way of distracting the rest of us from realizing the technology of Whammy, and that you do have drones that do have the ability to scale down to such a small remote sensing viewability, so to speak, and that they are watching, they are surveilling, that they are collecting all this data in real time from these drones with that, forget what you called it, the Grok stare.
Gorgon stare.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, those. Keep going.
No, that was it. It was just more of like a decoy, like let's decoy that it's all fake and it's all aliens, versus everybody kind of looking, the Gorgon stare is actually the bigger, you know, thing.
And I don't like to say, like, a lot of people want to only have there be like one answer or what have you. Like, I think aliens are definitely real. I mean, I don't know if they're visiting us, but there's definitely aliens out there somewhere. In fact, we might be like their cousins. We might be aliens. Who knows? I just think it's so much more impactful to our society about like free energy, teleportation, and then even the surveillance capabilities, I have to argue, are more important than the alien question. Aliens existing, fine. That's not really a big thing for me. Sure, you know, they exist. If they're going to start, you know, interfering, then they should start paying taxes or whatever else everybody else has to do. But the surveillance capability, they definitely don't want people knowing about that surveillance capability. I mean, that's really advanced. Like, you're talking DVR capabilities, because now you take what I said just a second ago about them making a profile about you. And by the way, what I'm about to tell you, they've already done. Like, we've got the videos on it, can show them. They combine that now with the Whammy. And now the AI is tracking every moving object on the screen. Every moving object on the screen, every car, every plane, every person walking around is all being tracked by the AI. Now, not only do they have a profile of you, they know where you've ever been. And they can be like, okay, pull up last week when Ashton was walking his dog out at the park. And then just pull that up and just follow you around, reverse engineer, like that movie The Net with Sandra Bullock, or Enemy at the State in the 90s. Like, they've got that now. That's the stuff that's scary. Yeah. Now, for now, I think that we're somewhat safe from that until the drones are flying above the cities. But in the riots and things like that, the drones were flying above the cities and they were doing that. It's not like that data goes away. They've got that forever. And it's not like they were just limited to the one little area either. They've got 100 square kilometers or something like that minimum. It's a whole city. they're covering with these drones. So yeah, I definitely think there's a big risk there. And then the next step is, okay, they were doing this on a drone in 2014. That was 11 years ago. Have they figured out how to put it on the satellites, or like Starlink satellites, for example, and now do that same idea, but with satellites where they don't even have to have a drone? That's the next level. And I would be surprised if they don't have that now.
Well, as long as we don't know about it, then they can use it for infinite social engineering, because it's not just about what they can get one person to do, is how can they link all this behavior together in a certain direction using, maybe household objects that are all connected to the internet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Everything that's a sensor is probably feeding into Palantir. I would look at it like that. That's the way of the world. There's not going to be very much privacy in the future, for sure. I mean, I just don't know. There's not much. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying it is what it is. The best we can do is probably be aware of it. Be aware of what they're doing on that front. That's why those videos were so important, is that they exposed this whammy capability that you can see where that's going to lead to. And it gives us some context to understand it. But whereas before, no one even knew what that was. It also tells us, man, they have a lot of surveillance when it comes to their covert operations. And it also shows that must be a covert operation. I mean, that drone is 100 square kilometers is big, but that's in the middle of the ocean. They don't have drones everywhere on the planet, so that meant they were ready for that thing to go down. They were ready for that to happen. They had 2 drones recording it from 2 different angles. So the scary part there is like, oh man, we're doing some sketchy black operations with this technology, with this surveillance capability that I guarantee they have some legal justification for what they did. But if that comes out to the public, screw your legal justification. Your legal justification is, oh, well, it killed 90% of innocent people, but we got the 10% that we wanted, so it's okay. Public's not going to buy that,
Hey, Ashton, I was taking a lot of notes that you was talking about, but one thing that caught my attention is that you said that we got this information is technology from somewhere. Now, you've mentioned the word aliens a lot, and you mentioned, the craft that can go underwater and stuff like that. I'm really big on the Anuna / the Anunnaki. I know you've heard of them plenty of times. And a lot of people will say that they came from a planet named Nibiru that orbits our sun every 3,600 years. Well, their actual text, their cuneiform text, and their depictions actually say that they came from the depths of the sea. I've shared the sources for that so many different times. And it's just interesting that you said that their technology would probably be better underwater than it would be in space. And that makes more of an idea of there's something that has to do with our water that's giving us this ability. And a case in point is Inky / EA. He came from the depths of the seas to give humans technology and information and so on and so forth. So, I wonder, because you said that nobody has ever been able to debunk you and say that your information is wrong, and you've been able to counter everything that they've said that they brought to you in so many different ways. I'm that way with when it comes to ancient texts. If they said that the Sumerians said something, I want to see where they got that information from so I can be just as accurate as they are. And I'm telling you, everything that I keep hearing right now is something from the depths of the seas is giving us information that we possibly are trying to figure out on an easy basis up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on Anunnaki. I'm familiar with the idea, but I do like it because I think that if there is a civilization hiding on this planet, it's definitely underwater. I mean, that's the place you would hide for sure. And with this kind of technology, having a civilization underwater is no problem either. I mean, you can just make a bubble, and you have alchemy, you have transmutation, you have everything you need. You can make a society anywhere you want. So I do like that idea, and I'm very intrigued by the lore around like underwater UFO bases and things like that, which wouldn't surprise me if we do find something down there. And I also like the idea of like, we are the aliens, or we were put here by the aliens, or something like that, because that's one of the only ways where it can kind of make sense, where there's this hyper advanced technology that doesn't seem like we found it organically, where it seems like there was something happening to it. And also just just this idea of like, if you look at this planet, out of all the different species that exist on this planet, billions of species, what's the one that sticks out? Oh, it's us. We stick out like a sore thumb on this planet. We've like reshaped the planet. We have the one of the biggest populations if you don't include insects, right? Like we're the ones that stick out the most. We're the ones that are like the alien species on this planet. So the Anunnaki thing I think is really interesting, and also because of how it connects to ancient history, and you know, whether or not like the pyramids and stuff like that are really as young as they say they are, or potentially maybe a lot older, or that there was, you know, major flooding and things that coincide with the Bible. I think a lot of those allow for this option where we forgot our history. Like something happened and we forgot who we really were. Like maybe we were more advanced, or advanced in different ways in the past, more than we think now. All of those I think are just interesting ideas that I think are very, very possible to be real.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything else they wanted to ask or bring up before we wrap it up? No? Okay.
It's a
All
great
right.
interview.
Yeah.
My brain is scrambled. You did a good job, Ashton.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Well, it's fun. You guys are fun. That was cool.
Yeah,
And I'm glad you guys aren't afraid to, like, if you want to ask me stuff about debunks and things like that too, you know, I like to answer any questions that are out there. And I'm not here to tell you, like, you know, you're saying, you know, you've debunked all debunks. Like, yeah, I feel like I've given adequate explanations for all the debunks that are out there. And I happen to know the videos are real, but I understand why people don't believe it. I mean, I'm somebody myself that even if you go back like 10 years ago, I would have had a completely different mindset of everything going on in the world. So I look at it more of like everybody's kind of on their own journey of discovery for the most part.
Yep.
And I'm just trying to like push it along as best as I can for the people that are ready, you know?
Doing a great job, I think. Thank you, sir. Before we wrap it up, I'll have the other people here just plug their shows again. And Lisa, what is going on? The Occult Reject Mad Scientist.
Ashton, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Nick. I jumped to tell Ashton that I thought this was an amazing presentation. I apologize, Nick. Ashton, amazing. I've heard of you. I've listened to a little bit of you. It was a very candid interview. I thank you for answering all our different questions. And you left with, like Tyrone was saying, I took so many notes. You've left so many seeds to kind of launch from. Thank you again. And thank you, fellow rejects, for having me on and letting me interrupt again. As usual, the only thing I'd like to plug is occultresearchinstitute.org. We have a couple of rejects that contribute to that website in literary form. If you'd like to check us out, occultresearchinstitute.org. And if you'd like to get a hold of me through Twitter, Solis Lisa is the best place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we got the Headless Giant.
Well, I don't want to leave the audience not having a complete or near complete list of authors that you would recommend for them to read up on so that they can get on the same level of knowledge that you have right now. So if you could give the people a quick list, or, you know, maybe a long list of the authors you've read that have led you here, that would be perfect.
I don't really have a list ready, but I mean, start with Hal Puthoff, Tom Bearden, Eric W. Davis. Those are probably the first three to start with. The reason being that Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis are both alive still. Eric Davis is testifying at these UFO whistleblower conferences, but he's written papers on teleportation for the Air Force. I mean, the disconnect is insane. So that's where I would start with those guys' papers. The ones that, and Hal Puthoff's one I mentioned earlier, gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. And even if you're somebody that's not deep in physics, okay, we'll have the AI interpret it for you and explain it to you in a way that you can understand, you know, and that's where you start. Nobody starts understanding everything perfectly right away. So those are probably the first three that I would start with. And then from there, I would say move into the DIRDs, the Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. Eric Davis wrote 6 of them, actually, and Hal Puthoff wrote 1 as well. And that's where you'll begin to find some of these other engineers and scientists like John Kramer and Friedwart Wienerberg that I mentioned, including Paul Siz is another guy that I like that wrote the papers on magnetohydrodynamics for propulsion. And I think he wrote the aneutronic propulsion, fusion propulsion paper too. So all of these concepts are all peer-reviewed scientific papers. They've been written by, you know, PhDs and Black Project engineers that are out there. So one more time, the DIRDs, Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. They were declassified / like released via FOIA back in like 2017. But they were the most popular scientific papers on the Pentagon's like secret air-gapped server for a number of years before that. So that's where I recommend checking those out. Everything you see in those papers is real.
Nice. Good question, Hellas. Did you want to plug your show, Hellas?
Oh, yeah. You can find my show on Thursday nights. We look at your mail if it has something to do with the paranormal or an interesting dream that you've had or stuff like that. You can find me on YouTube. And so check out the Headless Giant podcast at gmail.com if you have those stories. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Sarah, what is going on? How are you?
I'm good. That was an excellent presentation, and I like that it was put in a way that I could mostly understand it. You know, I'm also from the South, so I'm a little slow, like you said. And I just want to plug the Institute for Natural Philosophy as well as our magazine. You can see that at institutefornaturalphilosophy.org. And I would also like to plug our podcast, Universe Unveiled.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Tyrone, my man.
Yeah, that was an excellent presentation. I took a lot of notes, so I'm gonna be hitting you up in the future. Everything you can find on me is on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. I love ancient history. I love religion. I love UFOs. I love orbs. I actually have a video of an orb from my ring cam that I'll show you. I'll send it to you, whatnot. But yeah, this was definitely amazing. Everybody, I appreciate everybody for letting me be here. Nick, thanks for letting me be here, man.
Of course. No, thank you for joining us. And last but not least, Doc, what is going on, sir? Everybody know where they can
Hey,
find
not much, man. Hey, I'm 93% sure that he's connected a lot of dots for me today and gave me some puzzle pieces to contemplate on. So I thank you for your time and research, Ashton. I really enjoyed myself today. But Prometheus Lens Podcast, PrometheusLensPodcast.com. Anywhere fine content is consumed, you can find me there. And be sure to go to Amazon, help a poor country boy out, and check out the Epic of Esau, Birthright, and Seed War. I'd appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Doc. I always appreciate you here. And finally, Ashton, I'm pretty sure everybody knows who you are already, but if they don't, please let them know where they can find all your amazing work and anything again you want to promote.
Yeah, check me out at JustXAshton, all social medias, guys. YouTube, you can find all my stuff there. X, very active on X, and check out everybody else's content that was on this awesome panel, guys. Thank you for having me.
No, for sure. Thank you. And definitely go check out his Twitter. That man is on fire. So yeah, definitely check it out. And again, thank you all for making the show. I really appreciate you all putting the time aside and coming on. I really had some awesome questions, and thank you all. And everybody in the chat, there was just too many for me to even put it up on the screen anymore. But thank you, everybody that was here. It was a great time. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.